This week's episode is brought to you by the Wizzo Chocolate Company. Enjoy their Wizzo quality assortment, a wonderful variety of chocolates including Wizzo's Cherry Fondue, or their delectable Anthrax Ripple, or the world-famous Crunchy Frog made with 100% real frog. Wizzo quality assortment. Get yours today.
Like I said, Joe, pull that lever.
No. And welcome to the Geek Geek Podcast. I'm Joe.
I'm Dan.
I'm Mel.
I'm Ted.
Hey, guys. How's everyone
Hey,
feeling?
guys.
Hey,
I am
what's going
hot
on?
as hell. How about you?
I'm baking in the room. Got to turn off the air conditioner to get a clean audio.
Oh, my God.
Getting
It's
eaten
only-
alive by mosquitoes.
It's only 85 degrees and humid as hell.
The humidity's what, 150?
It's
Something like that?
It's New York humidity.
Yeah, the other day I was just sitting in the park. We had a cool breeze going right through it, and I was still sweating like a pig. I'm like, what the
See,
hell
at
is
least
wrong
you
with
had a
this?
breeze.
Well, that just meant I didn't feel the heat, but my body's like, no, you got to sweat. I'm like, great.
See,
Thanks.
you're lucky with the gift of sweat. I don't sweat. Being a tall, thin, lanky guy, I don't have sweat glands.
I don't know
You
if
have
I'd
a
call
lot
it
of-
the gift
You
of
have
sweat.
a lot of
It's a gift of a
surface
body
area
function.
for.
Oh, God. What I'd give to be able to sweat, because then otherwise I wouldn't be a fucking lizard. Oh.
Do you not retain heat during the winter either?
No, in the summer, I prefer a nice,
Warm
not
Chianti?
too humid, nice hot atmosphere, but not like this. This is really humid and sticky and really close feeling. In winter, it's absolute garbage. I hate anything below 60 degrees because I don't retain any heat. It leaves my body so bloody fast. I got to wear like 2-3 layers the moment it drops past 60.
And I've never
Yep,
seen you retain body fat, so it's not like you can build stores for winter.
What body fat? I don't have body fat.
That's what
I
I'm
think body fat-
saying. You've never.
I swear that's just in books. Ugh,
BMI
God.
of like 0.
He
negative.
does have a BMI. Well, then in that
Well, that's
case,
not how
you'd be-
BMI works, but that's
Yeah.
beyond the point.
You'd be dead. You would actually be dead.
Yeah, I know. I have some fat somewhere. I just don't know where. As soon as I have no ass, I have no calves. I don't know where the hell it is.
Yeah, but you know who has all of that?
Um,
Captain America. He's got all of that. And he wants kids to have all of that.
I'm confused.
Yeah, I'm.
He's
I
got
don't
a
know
whole
exactly where
series of
you're going with
videos
this.
in that new
Oh, this is the terrible segue
Spider-Man
part. I get what this is.
movie.
This is the terrible segue portion of the show.
I'm pretty sure he's a war criminal now.
Segue.
Oh my god! So yeah, if you couldn't tell, we at least half of us have seen. Actually, no, a little more than half.
Three-quarters.
3/4 of us
Wow.
have seen Spider-Man: Homecoming.
I
I'm gonna raise
cannot.
my hand and tell people right now that I was not the one who. I did not watch the movie this week.
Because he
I
hates
was-
everything.
He hates
I
Marvel.
do hate everything.
So
He
There's-
hates joy.
there is no joy in Ted's life.
Nope, my
None
heart is
whatsoever.
pretty black.
He is a very dark individual.
This is why he
He's
doesn't
a
understand the
ghost town.
difference between roguelite and roguelike and other games.
By the way, none of this is true. Okay, maybe some of this is true, but
No, none of this is true. I understand the difference.
But
Look.
what's the hot take, gentleman and lady? Did we like Spider-Man?
Yar.
Yar.
Yar. Yeah, so
That's an
basically,
excellent hot
so
take.
short answer is yes, it was very enjoyable. I enjoyed the shit out of it. Without going, no spoilers here, so this will be a
Yeah,
spoiler
we're
free
gonna try to be spoiler
review
free, guys.
because Ted hasn't seen anything yet, so we can't really go dive deep on this. But that means that everybody else can listen in on this.
Well,
and
to be
okay.
fair, I care more about the audience than I do about Ted being spoiled. So,
You only care about yourself anyways. We know that from previous episodes.
I mean, I take all this agency and I give it back to the people.
No, you don't.
I try.
You're not Bane either.
I couldn't fit the line.
You tried.
I tried, and I failed
It was a
miserably.
valiant effort, but yeah, you die on that hill.
We don't have to do this many callbacks in like 3 minutes. We got an hour, guys. We can spread this out a little bit more. The movie was fantastic, though. I really liked the way Tom Holland portrayed the both Peter Parker and Spider-Man, which is an important part that I think was missing from Raimi's setting and Raimi's movies, and also in the Amazing Spider-Man. So this movie was a lot of fun, though. And
Yes,
I
it was.
don't think we've had a Marvel movie this fun since maybe the original Guardians. Maybe.
It's kind of hard to compare them to each other because they're all so different from each other.
But this
From-
one was
from-
fun throughout. Like I can't.
Yeah.
I can't.
I mean, I had an ear to ear grin the whole time, which is a chore kind of for like a superhero movie, because you have your ups, your downs, your action sequences and whatnot, and in every movie you have maybe a few flaws here and there which take you out, but this generally going right through it was just enjoyable as hell. I mean, it was charming, it was sweet, it hit all the right notes. I mean, it kind of brought you back to high school a little bit. It reminded you of, I mean, they were going for that John Hughes vibe, and I think they nailed it. The model for Midtown High was none other than the alma mater of Brooklyn Tech.
Woohoo!
Which is kind of friggin' cool.
That's pretty cool.
Mhm.
Yeah,
So
very
if,
good.
if nobody
Small.
knows this, if we haven't spoken about this before, and we probably haven't at this point, but the majority of the group is all alumnus from Brooklyn Tech.
Yes, 3/4 of the podcast is alumni from Tech.
The secret
Yeah.
is guessing which 3/4. But if you threw a rock, you'd probably hit a Tech alumni.
Yeah,
Yes, you
I think
would.
that's
New York
generally
City.
true anyway. It is a specialized high school in the city of New York, and it is a very diverse group of kids who go to this school. They're all very bright, but it goes between, if you're a robotics type, or if you're a medical type, or if you're, into anything from architecture to biology to aeronautics to, I mean, take your pick. There is a spot for you at Tech, and this is not a plug. It's
And
just
if
one
all
of
else
those.
fails, you do ID.
Oh snap!
Oh,
Oh,
Yeah.
so I was going to ask a question. So is it good? Is it good by itself as a standalone movie?
Oh,
Yes.
absolutely.
yes.
So-
It pretty much is set up kind of as a standalone, where it does
Mm.
not rely on past Marvel movies to get you caught up. You could literally just pop this in the first time and be just fine.
And it's still in the MCU, right?
So
Yes.
I have a bit of an issue with that, and that is that I feel like there was, for a mainline character that really could have stood on his own, there was a bit too much Iron Man in my.
Really, I thought
Yes.
to be honest, I was worried there was going to be more of it, and I think that the amount was in it was fine.
I think the big shadow of TS unfortunately kind of looms large, even though it doesn't show up in a lot of the major sequences. It's that kind of they definitely told this line where he threatens to overshadow the movie, and at a certain point, I felt that his continued involvement in the movie threatened to make it almost an Iron Man 4, without with basically it's like it didn't really give Spider-Man a full chance to no, this is just Spider-Man's game. This was like them trying to. It almost felt like Sony trying to say, "Listen, this is an MCU movie. I swear it is. Look, you got Tony Stark, right? He's an MCU."
So
it was a bit. It felt a bit
Well, no, I don't,
tryhard.
I don't buy that. The usage of Tony Stark as a mentor character, especially considering that we haven't had a character of Peter Parker's age in the MCU. Everybody's been an adult. And to have a character who's basically grown up in the world where all of these other people exist, what would that do to a kid? If you were a 16 or 17-year-old kid, and you have Tony Stark with Avengers Tower in Manhattan, and you grew up in Queens, you would look up to that, person. It's something that you would, especially if you're as smart as Peter Parker is, that's somebody you would aspire to be. It's like a kid wanting to be Elon Musk or Bill Gates.
No. But I look. I agree with that sentiment. And yeah, no. I mean that he is a powerful mentor for Spider-Man. Yeah, no, I get it. Again, my criticism there still stands, and I think it's important, I guess, to mention that it's a very minor criticism. I don't think it detracts from the movie at all, except that I would have maybe enjoyed it. That's not even the right way to say it. But if this movie had less Iron Man in it, I would have been I would have been fine.
You wouldn't be. Would you be happier with less Iron Man in the movie?
It's kind of tough to say because he's really not in it a whole lot, and that's
he's not in it that long at all.
But his influence feels like he's talked about a lot. Whether they're referencing the internship, whether they're referencing, the suit itself, or things like that in conversations with his best friend. It's like that's always on Peter's mind, and it feels a little weird. Which actually leads to another criticism I had of it, which was that given when this movie is supposed to take place, it doesn't feel like we're looking at the same Spider-Man because he feels a lot less competent. And I wasn't certain about that criticism until I went back and actually watched Civil War again. Watched him take down the guys that he does take down. And besides being great and witty and it being a short, very juicy taste of Spider-Man, like he fights very well and very efficiently. And while you get some of it in some of the sequences, there are other parts of it where it feels like he's just kind of flailing his way through it. And I understand that that might be part of how he's written for this movie and the journey he's taking in this movie. But at the same time, it's like, but he was a lot more competent fighting some guys with like some serious powers. So
You don't go backwards.
Yeah, but here's the thing. All the people he's fighting in Civil War are pulling their punches. You can't say that in Homecoming. Everybody he's fighting is trying to literally kill him. There is a difference between Cap fighting him, which Tony mentions. Like if he wanted to break you in half, he would have. It's the realization that you may think you're this big thing, but realize the last time you got into a big fight with all these guys, they were all pulling their punches. Nobody really wanted to hurt each other. Whereas you run into the characters, the villains in this film, they will kill you. Part of, I guess, his growth is realizing that he is not as strong as he thinks he is at the beginning. By the end, he is Spider-Man, if that makes any sense.
yes and no.
I mean,
Again,
that
like I
makes
said,
sense to me,
those
but-
are the two major criticisms I had with the film, and it just felt like it felt like a Samus style reset, where it's like you start off with Samus being all big and badass, and then Ridley shows up, and then you lose everything and have to find it all again. It's like, I guess for me, it just doesn't. I don't particularly like that kind of a hero's journey, only because it's like you gave us a taste of what he was able to do, and he was awfully competent to stand toe to toe with some of the people that he did stand with.
Even pulling punches.
Yeah,
He
so
still was able to spar.
Yeah,
So-
but I'm thinking back to because I just saw the movie yesterday. I'm thinking back to the few fight sequences he has, and I don't see other than because even when he has the suit taken away, he's competent, and that's like a big disadvantage considering all the the tricked out stuff, which again I thought was going to be a big issue with having basically a Tony Stark built kind of iron spider suit, but it turns out that that Peter doesn't use a lot of that stuff, or he doesn't like a lot of that stuff that's built in. He just wants it, plain Jane, no bells, whistles, or whatever. And he kind of circumnavigates his way in Peter Parker's solution to that.
well, that was probably the other thing that was interesting going into it, because I remember complaining about the trailer that they gave away what was a critical turn in the movie, and sure enough, that was a critical turn in the movie. It was not the big turn in the movie,
No.
but it was like, it might have
But
been
it was
better
justified.
hidden.
It's one of those things like it shows it in the trailer, but I thought, to be honest, I thought that was going to come way earlier in the film. And I was glad when it happened because by then you have built up a valid excuse for it.
But I
so
think
that
that's
when
what
you
we
have that-
expected because of the trailer, because it showed up there, and it's such an important point that we expected it earlier in the movie, and for it to be basically
Yeah.
inconsequential. But it turned out to be important for the character growth.
Yes.
And that's sort of unfortunate that they chose to give it up in the trailer, especially in such an early trailer for the movie, because that I remember showing up pretty quickly. Maybe
Yeah, but
my
to be honest,
memory's
there's a lot of
faulty,
stuff that's in the trailer that's not even in the movie, so you can't even say a lot of stuff was spoiled.
No,
But
no. But
No,
I
no,
mean,
I'm
but
saying-
that part is still in the movie, and it's still like,
Yeah, but it's not as crucial because you're already kind of going that path anyway, regardless of that scene. So it's not one of those things where like without that scene, like the whole thing falls apart.
Mhm.
In a sense where if they don't have that scene in the trailer, it's not going to hurt the trailer. But if
Well,
you don't have that scene
there's
in
more
the movie,
to that scene though. There's more. There
oh,
is
there's a
more
lot
to
more to
that
that
scene.
scene.
And
Yeah.
that shows a lot of the development between the relationship of those two. And don't get me wrong, I don't want anything of this movie changed at all. This is still a really fantastic movie, and for me, I think it's definitely fighting for the top position in my top 10.
Yeah, it's definitely in my
MCU
top
films.
5 Marvels, easy.
It's
Mhm.
I rewatched Iron Man yesterday, and the first Iron Man, and
Yeah.
Yeah, I was able to like knock that down as a result. So now it's
Oh wow.
sort of fighting
Okay.
Guardians for that 1-2 um, spot in my at least in my list. But I mean, you know, I guess the important thing again is that for me these are very minor quibbles.
Yeah,
You
I
know
mean
that
these are like we're nitpicking if you want
yeah,
to call it anything. It's
this is
very
like
much nitpicking.
this
These
is
are
like
not yeah,
these are not
good.
big like third act problems
No.
or like I mean Keaton. Can we talk about Keaton for a second?
Oh, absolutely. He was phenomenally cast.
Oh my god. It's so
Mhm.
nice to have a villain that is not only relatable, but is not
Yes.
your hand wringing I'm going to take over the world.
No, he had very simple motivations. They set it
Mhm.
up perfectly. He was one of the very few Marvel villains that they've been able to do successfully that have a motivation that's valid, that you could buy into, that is justifiable in a sense, that you could build a character fully, and you can kind of almost root for the guy,
Even his
and that's
henchmen.
yeah, even the henchmen. It's like everybody. It's like there's a legitimate reason for why they exist, and they're not like trying to take over the world, like Dan said. They're not trying to conquer anything. They are just doing their thing. It's very much a small movie,
Mhm.
and it kind of reminds me a little bit of the Netflix Daredevil series, where you're telling a story that's very small. Peter Parker's not trying to save the world. He's trying to save his neighborhood in Queens.
Yep.
That's all he's interested in. Is essentially he's just kicking around like the Seven Line, and going between Woodside, Sunnyside, and jumping around Queens. His sandwich shop,
Saying hi
his
to the people on the elevated train.
which is friggin' awesome. I'm like, oh, I know where that is. Oh, I know where that is. The amount of scenery that they shot for this in Queens and in New York was kind of enjoyable. And no, there is a point with Keaton, going back to that,
Mhm.
where you're right. He's not a villain in the sense of he's bad throughout. He's a guy who starts out as they in the very beginning they give you literally not his origin story, but kind of the turn in his life that
Mhm.
puts him on the path to where he is. And by the time you catch back up with him, it's several years later, and you're like, okay, that makes sense. And he's not an evil person. He is just a guy who happens to do illegal things, but for him, he doesn't see himself as a villain.
Mm-mm.
And I think any good villain doesn't look at themselves as a villain. They see themselves as being in the right, or at least being justified in their actions.
Did your movie theater start talking and babbling when that big scene happens? When that door
Oh,
opens?
you talking about that one? That's I'll say this without spoiling any of this stuff, because we're
Yeah,
gonna
yeah, yeah. I'm trying to be as circumspectual as I can about it, but
I was not expecting that scene to be in it. I am ecstatic that it was, because that was a great choice. That was a phenomenal scene.
But what did your theater do? Because
The theater was pin quiet.
really
There was a gasp at the beginning. It was pin quiet, and it ratcheted up the emotion for that scene. And so by
My
the time that whole sequence is over, you could hear everybody breathing. It was so quiet in there.
my whole theater gasped like it was a '90s sitcom, and there was murmuring throughout. Remember that, Mel?
Mm-hmm.
Like everyone's like, "Oh my god!" And it was just wonderful because I love it when
Yeah, when an audience
when-
really reacts to something on screen, absolutely.
Oh,
Well,
wait.
my theater was laughing. My theater was cheering, especially all the Queens stuff, because I saw it in Queens, because that's
Oh,
where
okay,
I am.
yeah.
But everybody was sitting there rooting, like woohoo, and
Close to the end of the movie, or just
no, a lot of the
You'll see it.
you'll
but,
see it.
But I'm not going to tell you where that scene is. But I mean, regardless to say, like this is one of the reasons why I kind of enjoyed trying to see it close to opening weekend.
Yeah,
because you get the
'Cause I wanna
real
see the
excited
audience
fans.
reaction.
Yeah, because when we went to, I forgot what movie we went to that was like mostly empty. It was Wonder Woman, I think. When we went,
No, that was fairly well.
Suicide Squad
Was it? Yeah, I think it was Suicide
with
Squad.
the guy smoking in the front.
Yeah, it was sort of like it was a fairly packed theater, but no one was really in it as like fans. You know what I mean? It wasn't opening weekend kind of thing. Whereas like when we went to Harry Potter, and I think it was Goblet of Fire, we went to,
Opening night.
and we went for the midnight showing, and just
Yeah.
people dressed up in that regalia, and everyone cheering when the music came on. Like,
Oh, you can't compare those kinds of experiences because I remember that kind of stuff from, I went to all three of the Star Wars prequel openings, and those kind of experiences are completely different than going to see any other kind of movie on opening weekend.
yeah, but I mean, what I'm getting at is just the energy of the people who are
Oh, yeah,
there
absolutely.
opening weekend.
Oh,
Like, they're really fans of it. Like,
They're
they
in it.
really want to see
It's
it.
amazing.
Everyone else is just like, I'll wait till the opening night crowds are gone.
Oh, gone, yeah.
Yeah, and then they're like, it's okay.
Yeah.
But it's
I don't know
like,
what the fuss was about, but yeah.
You're like, where's my scarf? I need it.
I mean, I will say probably one of the best theater going experiences I ever had was going to the episode 1 premiere, and waiting online with everybody. We had
I'm
ordered
so sorry.
weeks in advance. Listen, the movie was crap, but the experience of going to the theater and seeing it, all the way through like the opening crawl and having people standing and applauding and dressed in full Jedi regalia and Darth Vader costumes, and everybody was, from an 8-year-old kid to a 60-year-old man was excited, and that kind of like energy in a room. I don't think I've gone to a theater with that kind of feeling since.
I mean, I'll tell you this. I mean, I get it because I remember when we went to go see The Force Awakens, when that crawl starts and that music kicks in.
Oh, yeah, that's.
I don't know if you saw me, but I was weeping. I was trying not to like.
I had this
openly
very
cry.
weird. I had this very weird like fanboys feeling of the what if it sucks, and I kind of like half holding my breath, and like the movie starts, and I'm like, okay, what's this gonna be like? What's this gonna be like? And like I got about through maybe the first 12 minutes, and I'm like, okay, I'm good.
Okay.
And then I was in, and then from there on, like people were cheering. It's like they do the reveal of the Falcon. I'm like, fuck yes,
Oh my God,
screaming. And the theater was screaming, yelling, hollering. It's like, yeah, that was fun. But but in the beginning of that movement, I was like, please be good, please be good, please be good, because I've been burned before.
Kind
Treat me gentle.
kind of swinging back to Spider-Man for a second. There was one thing I was thinking about. It was in the back of my head as we were watching the movie. Was going to be the inevitable comparison to DC movies, and in particular the hot DC movie of Wonder Woman. And sure enough, as I'm walking out of the theater with Mel, we start walking behind these two guys who are like, still not. What did they say? It's like, yeah, it was much better than Wonder Woman. I'm like, this is not really a comparison that needs to be made. I feel
it's not it's not an even comparison either. It's like apples and oranges. They're two totally different kinds of movies.
Well, they're basing it off the fact it's just two superhero movies, right?
That's exactly it. It's two
be,
popular. In the same time frame, two popular superhero movies from opposing comic book camps. So of course you were gonna get the comparison. But it's sort of like throwing, but it's sort of like comparing like the Deadpool movie to all of the DCEU.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
You can't sit there and compare one to the other when they were both filmed probably around the same time. For two completely different audiences, where Wonder Woman is kind of built around the DC camp. It's kind of made more for adults. You can bring kids, kind of. But Spider-Man, you can have an 8-year-old kid there, and there was nothing wrong with that movie.
But also, Wonder Woman is a World War I reconciliation movie.
Yeah.
And Spider-Man is more of a high school drama movie.
It's a John Hughes movie. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
The guy's the dork, and he pines after the girl who is just as dorky as he is, but he doesn't see that because she's pretty.
And it's like the audience, he wants to fall in love with her. She wants him to fall in love with her. And it's like the audience is like, yes, get together. And it's like that kind of back and forth of relationships in high school. It's like the awkwardness and the goofiness. And there's this stupid like punk bully, and there's like the awkward kid, and there's the...
Oh, God, what they did with
and the
Flash,
party.
I really loved what they did with Flash.
I love that. They made him they basically made Flash Thompson...
Spoilers.
Yeah, this isn't really a spoiler.
Well,
okay.
They make instead of having the tropey, the high school jock, the sports jock, which
especially
doesn't really
for a
exist
school like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That kid doesn't exist anymore. So what do you make? You make the Facebook troll. That's the bully these days. Is the guy who would annoy the crap out of you on social media, or who would sit there and just yap in your ear all day and just tease, make fun of you, and just call you out on crap. That kid, and he is just as annoying and just as threatening, as back 20 years ago if it was a football player.
Mm-hmm.
Ned was adorable. Oh my god!
Everybody, all the kids are phenomenal. The casting in this movie was absolutely terrific.
Ned actually reminded me of a lot of like an amalgamation of a lot of friends I had during that time in high school. So it was actually really hysterical as he's going around, palling around with Peter. I'm like, yeah, this feels like what happened, or what would have happened, Yeah,
and it doesn't feel like the kind of relationship that services a main character in the sense of he is only there to convey this information, or he's only there to do this one job. These all felt like, even if they were a small little bit part, they all felt like they were in a world where this is the stuff that goes on a daily basis. This is the world that Peter lives in. These are all the people he interacts with. And no matter how minor the interaction was, it felt real. And that's not easy to do on a movie like this.
No, not at all. I think the other student that stood out for me was really Zendaya.
Oh yeah, she was so good.
Yeah, she was phenomenal.
She was so good.
And
I wanted to
it's funny.
See her shake her hair on her picture.
Oh man.
Oh yeah, like the basket case in the Breakfast Club.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
she totally fit that kind of neat little niche.
She was Molly Ringwald.
Yeah, no, basket case girl.
Oh no, you're right. What's her name?
Liz is Ringwald.
Yes. Thank you.
And then
The one in the back who didn't actually have detention.
Yeah. So wait,
Yeah.
so where does Peter play? Is Peter's probably the kid with the
He's Emilio. He's Emilio.
So
Yeah.
he's the jock?
No, he's not the jock.
Emilio's the jock.
Yeah.
Cuz the only three spaces
because he's not the
he's not the kid who threatened suicide with a flare gun.
No, and he's not the rash hothead.
Bender.
Yeah.
Ah, Bender.
I bend things.
Did you like that post credit sequence?
Oh, the mid credit sequence was great, and the post, of course, I think that was probably one of the best ones they've ever done.
I say that post credit sequence, the one at the very end, out Ferris Bueller's Deadpool's Ferris
Bueller. Absolutely.
No.
Yes.
No, because Deadpool went for like a direct Ferris Bueller thing. This one went for like the feel of that Ferris Bueller ending.
Yeah.
And
The
it's just
spirit of it.
yeah,
not
the spirit of it, and gave us something new to like. Oh, that's really cool.
And it gave it. You know, what's funny? It serviced what the audience wanted. It gave the audience exactly what it wanted to hear.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you didn't know you wanted to hear this, but here it is. And it's like here it is, and it was great.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. I'm excited. I'm excited for Infinity War. Not that I wasn't before, but I'm stoked for it. I feel like we lost somebody.
I think we did. I think TJ just walked away from the conversation.
Bye.
Oh no!
We're having audio difficulties.
I was.
Yeah.
No, he actually announced his plans to leave, and he's gone. Although I thought he would say something.
No Irish exit for me. I will have to leave. I have to take care of something else. Sure, no, so.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh no! How dare you leave with 15 minutes left in our scheduled time?
Are you leaving us for another podcast?
Yes, I am.
And when he has such a nice mic too, you have not clipped or anything, TJ.
You can't. You've come through the very few times we've let you talk. You've come through perfectly clear.
Thank you for letting me out of my leash. Yeah, I won't have to bounce out early.
Oh, hold on. Wait. Can we move on to Castlevania then? Because I got to hear what you have to say on that. Well,
so,
just give me the hot take. Give me the hot take.
My hot take on Castlevania. I'm only 2 episodes in. I haven't finished it like you.
Just give me the hot take.
So far, okay. It makes me interested in watching the second season. I don't understand why it's 4 episodes and now one whole 2-hour movie. The way they cut the episode so far seems ridiculous. But I like some of the general themes of the movie. I like the action in the movie. I like the fact that Dracula isn't a very one-dimensional bad guy in the movie. And I like the fact that what happened to the country was sort of coming to them, sort of. So that's my hot takes on the movie. So you can go ahead and rail on the movie, or not the movie, not the movie. I'm saying movie. I'm literally saying movie because
that's what it feels like.
Yeah,
feels like a movie. It does not feel
I definitely
like
agree with you
a
right there.
series.
It should not have been a 4-episode thing. It should have been just recut as a what is that 80-minute movie
It's
just been released as that.
And it's Netflix, right? They have the option to make it a movie. They don't need to. They don't have to have an option. See, now I'm staying a little bit longer. They don't.
No,
need to have,
I just wanted to know where you sat with this.
yeah,
before.
they don't need. They didn't. It's Netflix. That's the master of binge watching. So I don't understand why they need to have.
And they gave us such a bite-sized
4 hour.
morsel of this thing.
Yeah, and then in the way that, and from what I've read so far, the ending of this particular season, quote unquote, is a lead off to the next season, quote unquote.
Which they didn't even know if they were going to greenlight until they announced it later.
This is not. That's my hot take. Content wise, I'll leave it on. I will leave that to you, Dan.
Okay, we can talk about it more when you get back next week if you finish it.
Okay. Yeah. So I guess we'll take my hot take part 2 next time, guys. So I'm going to log off. So you guys have a good rest of the show.
All right, man. Thanks for kicking around for a while.
All right. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
I agree with him with that criticism. It should have been, especially at 4 episodes, it should just have been recut as a movie, as a pilot movie.
Quickly, let's circle back and kick off this conversation properly.
Okay.
So Netflix has launched a Castlevania animated series, and it premiered when?
I don't know.
Last
a couple
week?
days ago? 3 days ago?
Okay.
5 days ago?
Okay.
It's recent. Look, I mean, here's the thing, man. I'm in the minority on this one. I don't like it. It didn't click with me. I'll start with the good, man. It's got great voice work, and it's got great animation for the most part. Ultimately, it sticks pretty closely to a lot of things that were established not only in Castlevania 3, but in other later entries such as Symphony of the Night. And that's one of the things that I commend the production team for. If you look really closely, you're going to see quite a bit of Easter eggs that are callbacks to different things about Castlevania that are like, oh, okay, yeah, I know where that's from, or that's cool, that's neat. Where it starts to break down for me is in the characterizations. Now, the voiceover work is done really well, but the script that they actually had to work on was awful. And it's not to say that there are not funny moments. There are. The jokes that they have in there work a lot, and I was laughing. But I was surprised that I was laughing at a Castlevania thing that is usually so steeped in gothic horror. And Castlevania has never had brilliant writing. There is the famous line in the beginning of Symphony of the Night where Dracula calls man, and it's one of my favorite lines, "What is a man? A pitiful little pile of secrets." It's like such an oddly...
It's such a very odd sentence, yeah.
Yeah, it's odd, and the voice actor delivers it, really well. But there's a scene in, I don't remember if it's episode 1 or episode 2. I think it's in episode 2, at the very beginning, where for like a good 5 minutes, you have 2 farmers talking about fucking farm animals.
Like actually fucking farm animals, or just talking about farm animals?
Yeah, like talking about fucking farm animals, like pants down, go right in there.
I think you're just dropping in the pejorative. Like, no, they're just talking about fucking,
No, they're
bullshit.
talking about having sex and engaging in coitus with their animals.
So
and
there's a bestiality reference. Okay,
and it's stuff that feels that, along with the level of gore that's in there, both of them feel like they're just in there for shock rather than being used to full effect. And in a sense, like, it becomes hard for me to actually recommend this to a bunch of my friends because they really like Castlevania, they don't mind gore, but the level of gore that's in here is even much for what I was expecting.
Hmm.
And it like it's a bit much and a bit like too over the top. Luckily, it's not like Tarantino where he'll stick on a moment a bit longer than he should, but he's gonna do it anyway because he can. You know what I mean? Like with some of the bloodletting from like Kill Bill.
Yeah.
You know, it's not quite there, but at the same time, it makes it harder for me to enjoy it because now I'm being distracted by that. Now that's just part of it. The rest of it has to do with the way these characters are characterized, particularly Trevor. Like Trevor Belmont, like I've read a lot of reviews of people saying, "Oh, he's such a badass in this thing," and I failed to see the badass in him. It seemed they wanted to give him a kind of down on his luck noble house who can save the world but doesn't want to kind of thing. But they didn't really make him likable. They didn't really make him someone you wanted to root for. And when he does have his like dramatic turn in the fourth episode, you unfortunately have the situation where he reverts back to that old attitude of this ain't my problem. And it's like it's such a look, when you start up Castlevania 3, the actual NES card, it tells you, yeah, the Belmonts were exiled for their supernatural ability to fight the forces of evil because the townsfolk were always scared of them. But when you press start, Belmont is kneeling at the ruins of a church, praying to God to like sanctify his journey to kill Dracula. And that's a big, vivid imagery. It's like this guy was rejected by everybody, but he's still gonna follow his mission because that's why he's there. That's why he's a Belmont, and the Belmonts are supposed to take care of this stuff. But you don't get that with this series at all. And I think the final criticism I really have is pacing. At some point, they must have known they only have 4 episodes and still decided to treat it like they had a full 13 episode cut so they could go real slow introducing everything.
Well, doing a little bit of background diving on it, because I haven't seen any of it yet, is that it started out production in 2007 as a direct-to-DVD kind of film. And then somewhere around 2008, so about a year later, it completely stalled and went into development hell until it was picked up again in 2012. Was reworked a couple of times, and then since then has kind of changed hands a number of times, including in 2013 or so. It went to Netflix, but it was kind of Netflix in name only. That a lot of the behind-the-scenes stuff was still being handled by all these smaller studios. So Netflix is just there to distribute. So it's not so much as like Netflix like dropping the ball on this. This is a lot of Netflix was there to distribute it to kind of bolster their anime catalog. And this was just something that I guess they couldn't agree on whether they wanted to do a series or a movie and what the tone was, because apparently everybody involved, nobody played the games, and so they had to go and deal with people who weren't used to or familiar with the license.
And Konami couldn't care less about their license anymore. So
yeah, and then Konami's sitting there going yay or nay on certain ideas, and so they're going back and forth, and then between that is what you get.
I mean, look, this wasn't easy to screw up, in my opinion, because all you really had to do was start Trevor from when he starts kicking ass in town, set the whole thing to a heavy metal rock soundtrack, and just give me some good animations with the fights. That's it. I didn't need a personal discovery thing. This guy's going to kill Dracula. Make Dracula the most interesting character.
Yeah.
And, because in all the games, like, the Belmonts are the least interesting of the characters there. They're just there as an avatar for the player and to give you that sense of, like, okay, I can take on anything. You don't get a character with great characterization until you play as Alucard in Symphony of the Night. And even then, when you get to the later games, like Dawn of Sorrow, you get Soma Cruz, who get he gets a very interesting cast of characters around him, including Alucard. But the Belmonts themselves were just, they're just pious motherfuckers that have a blessed whip. So it's like, I don't know,
Whip, 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 whip.
whip. So that, I mean, I didn't like it,
Disappointing,
but
at the least disappointing.
and it's very disappointing what they did with it. I will say this though, after having watched the 4th episode, it really began to pick up. So I really think watching it from maybe just episode 4 on is the way to go, or maybe just episode 3, because the first 2 episodes there's so much unnecessary exposition on things that ultimately don't matter. Oh, I do have one final thing to say about Castlevania. It's another one that was a really surprising, huge whiff on their part, was the music. The title music is more evocative of Batman than it is Castlevania.
Like which Batman? Like the Keaton Batman? You're talking
The
about Val Kilmer
the
Batman?
Nolan Batman.
Interesting. Okay.
And what's even worse is that not a single measure of any of Castlevania's iconic music is in there at all.
And that's weird considering that they have Konami's blessing in a sense to do the movie. Why doesn't Konami give them the rights to the music?
And considering the way that this thing was hyped, because don't forget, it was shown off with an NES in front of a TV, like, "Hey, Castlevania's back, bitches." That you don't that you don't pay that homage to it, even a little bit. Is like, that just doesn't seem right. At least from a viewer perspective, not as in like, oh, right or wrong. It's more of like, it just makes it no longer feel like Castlevania.
Well, that's kind of what you get when you have people, writing on something that's a franchise who have no idea what it is, and they make it their own thing, which is not what it was to begin with.
Hello, Super Mario Brothers movie.
Hello, a lot of adaptations, especially by video games. For some reason,
Not Mortal Kombat. Mortal Kombat's still the best video game adaptation ever.
Well, yeah, it doesn't mean it's not a good movie. It's a terrible movie, but it is very even with the game. But then again, you're talking about a game that didn't have much flesh on the bone to begin with.
Also, didn't cast an Asian man for Raiden. Who did he get?
Yeah,
It was Lambert, right?
Yeah, Christopher Lambert, a Frenchman, playing Raiden. Yeah.
The God of
Hey.
Thunder.
Bowser Fury is based off of Pong, right?
Yes.
Technically, yes.
Also, it's based off of which kung fu movie is it based on?
Take a pick. It's a whole bunch of there. That's a good thing about like satire movies. Is they could pull from all sorts of different.
Was it Game of Death? I know it had.
It was very Game of Deathy, or what's the other one?
Because that's the one that had.
Enter the Dragon.
No, Enter the Dragon's the one where he's protecting the school, wasn't it?
No, Enter the Dragon's the tournament.
Is it Enter the Dragon is the tournament?
Yeah, Bruce Lee. That's the tournament.
That's where he gets transported to the island, right?
He goes to the island, and then they have the fighting
Kareem.
tournament. Yeah, fights.
Kareem Abdul, and then he fights Norris, doesn't he?
No, Norris is Game of Death, I think.
Okay, I'm mixing all my.
You're mixing Kung Fu and Bruce Lee movies.
Yeah, seriously.
They are not all one movie. Although that would be
No, he did fight. He did fight Chuck Norris in a movie, though. I'm almost
Yeah,
certain of that.
Game of Death.
Yeah.
I think it was Game. If I'm not mistaken, it's Game of Death. But I will use my Google Foo to find this out.
Come on, man. You are the movie buff in here.
I am the movie buff, but that's reaching a little bit past like where Jesus Christ, man! I was born in the '80s, not the '60s. So some of these movies, Way of the
Must know
Dragon.
Everything.
Way of the Dragon. There
Way
we
of
go.
the Dragon.
Hey, so I got something that we could all
1972. So you can go suck an egg. I was nowhere near born yet.
talk about. Anyway,
Sorry.
so video games are pretty expensive, right, guys? Pretty
Depends. I kind of remember. I remember a time when I was a young lad going to buy a video game at Funcoland. I'm not going to date myself at all. And going to buy a game called Final Fantasy VII, and being shocked that it was $70. Because I think at the time most games were 30 to 40. I think maybe at the most
Mhm.
at that time.
So try buying the Genesis cart of Super Street Fighter Turbo: The New Fighters, the last edition they put out, right? and
Mhm.
being told that it's a steal at $130 from PC
Oh.
Richards.
Yeah, but isn't that a box set, or is that
No,
a
that was
rather
just
an
that
exclusive,
was
or is it just basic?
no, that was just in a plastic box, kind of the way you bought all Genesis games. There was nothing special about it. It was just they charged a lot for that damn cart.
That what? When was that? That was like
That
what,
was that was like the
early
week it,
'90s?
the week it came out, probably early '90s, maybe mid '90s.
Yeah, and that was when they didn't have like flat pricing for video games. It was kind of like, well, is it popular? Yeah. Is it not popular? No. Okay, well, charge more because we got stock to move.
So now we got basically a flat pricing where everything is $60, right, guys?
Roughly, yeah.
Roughly. So the notable exception to this stuff is early access, of course, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Now, what is your guys' take on early access? Is it that it's because they're usually lower prices because the game's in development,
Yeah.
but do you guys feel like you have the understanding that that price won't go up?
No, okay, my understanding of early access as both a participant and an observer is depending on the developer. Because I've seen it both ways, where it's expensive and it's cheap, where they'll put out a product, and if it's really early in the development cycle, they may have a lower price to try to get more people involved, to try to help bolster the budget, to try to get it finished. And early access also has a very, very long history with projects getting dropped midway through and kind of abandoning players. But the very few, I shouldn't say very few, the ones that go to completion, that actually get launched, I have seen, depending on how long that cycle is, if they're around for a year or 2 years, they may do sales like the regular Steam sales,
Mhm.
like where it'll drop in price during those Steam sales, bolster that budget and fill those coffers so they can finish the damn thing. And then I have seen the opposite, where it'll just be a flat price all the way through, and it'll be a very low price.
So getting to the meat of the issue, there's a big dust up with a game that we all have a piece of Ark Survival
Yeah,
Evolved.
yeah.
So that game is getting ready to come out of early access and is getting ready for full release on the major systems: PC, Xbox One, and PS4.
Hmm.
The problem it's facing is not that it emerged from early access and was suddenly $60, but that it went ahead and raised its price on PC in particular from 30 to $60 while it still has a couple of weeks left in early access. Now, I will posit that if this game released in full from early access and then raised its price, we wouldn't be seeing as big of a pushback on it. But as it is, there are plenty of people, including fellow developers, saying that this is a greedy move, um, and others complaining that they still have plenty of stability optimization and server fixes left to go. So for them to charge $60 for a broken game is them just doing a big money grab.
Well, I can argue with that particular argument with it's not finished, and how dare they charge $60? Well, all I have to do is look at Assassin's Creed and know that's a piece of bullshit.
Yeah, none of
Let's not
these.
make that
Also,
argument.
Also, Batman, the Arkham Knight was
Arkham, yeah, absolutely. It was unplayable for what, a month before they got everything sorted?
technically it's still unplayable if you don't have specific hardware.
Yeah.
they're also about to launch, so theoretically they are hopefully just about finished.
Yeah.
With beta, and they are probably finished with beta and just about wrapped up and ready for release. So players who are buying the early access now are really just getting a head start on the.
Full
You're buying
release.
a head start.
Yeah.
You're early access. You're not
Yeah.
really buying the beta that everyone who bought it earlier for the lower price are getting.
Yeah, because
So
the thing is this,
there's a difference between
Yeah.
early access, beta, and just buying early access and for a higher price and getting a couple weeks or maybe a month early access
Like a
and
head
not
start
getting the
kind of thing.
same
Yeah.
a head start and not getting the same beta quality that the other people would expect. So if you're getting the lower quality, not polished game for a higher price, it's definitely not worth it. But if you're getting the polished, higher quality and you're paying the higher price but getting an earlier access, which is I think what they did with Blizzard with what was it? Was it Diablo did that?
Maybe.
Or was it? I'm trying to remember. They did that. I think Blizzard did that with one of their releases.
Well, it also does it with WoW occasionally, with
Yeah.
the head starts for it. I mean, I
Um,
honestly don't have a problem with this. Mostly because I always expect the early access prices to be, get in on it now, play it early, play versions of the games that basically will not exist in a couple of months, and the game is constant, and especially with a developer who's as into it as the guys who made Ark. I don't remember their names off the top of my head, but
Wildcard Studio.
but I mean they release patches every week, and it's
Yeah,
been
in the very beginning, it was every week, and then it kind of trickled down to maybe every month there was a big patch, and then there was a good drought, and then now, as we're getting closer to release, it's almost every other day, where they're really pounding away at fixes. And I swear, I follow some of them on Twitter, and they're like, I haven't slept. It's like trying to get
crunch
stuff
time
done.
for them, yeah.
Yeah.
But that's the thing that kills me about this is that there's still several weeks before the official release of the game, so they still have quite a bit of time to do all of these optimization and stability fixes that people are clamoring about. For me, the move from 30 to 60 is inevitable. There is a bit of a disconnect between what is on the market for 60 versus what is on the market for 30, because you do have games like Rust that sell a similar experience without the same the same amount of content for $20, or something. I think, what was it? Kerbal was still like just maybe 30, 35.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. It depends on the kind of game. Like, if you look at like
Mm-hmm.
Kerbal, I don't think anybody could possibly think of selling Kerbal for $60.
No,
No,
absolutely
it's not that kind of game. Same thing with what the hell was another game? I mean, there are games that like the price point fits. And for Ark, for early on, I mean, the game is, I think that's the big complaint. Everybody's like, oh my God, it's 2 years old, so how dare they raise the price? It's like, well, yeah, but 2 years ago it was unplayable. 2 years ago they had 4 dinosaurs, and you were lucky you could build shit.
And it was a very, very different game. And game development has a very long tail.
Yeah.
And I mean, this speaks to a lot of things, including how long something should be in early access and how early should access really be. But, this is a model for smaller studios like Wildcard to start getting the funding that they need in order to build the better mousetrap.
Yeah, because it was like a year ago that Microsoft came to them and says, hey, how would you like to be on Xbox? Because originally Ark was just going to be a PC game.
And then it became a darling on PC, and Microsoft is like, oh, we need you.
Yeah, and so now they got to split the team between Xbox and PC, and that pissed off all the player base. They're like, oh, well, why are you working on the Xbox thing? It's like, well, because that's what we're getting paid to do. We're getting paid to port it over to Xbox, which means our small studio has to now suddenly hire, which means we need more money, and we're getting some of that from Microsoft because they're not going to fund the whole thing.
Honestly, I think they're still getting a lot of bad will from when they sold the DLC for $20 for the other island, for the other map.
Yeah, for Scorched Earth. Yeah,
for Scorched Earth,
and that was one of those things where it was a if you paid attention to the development cycle of the original game, on the path from when they launched on early access to when the release of the DLC was in line with their original schedule before Microsoft decided to tell them to go port stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's one of those things, like they could either put the DLC out now, or they can wait a full year to put it out and immediately launch with DLC, which also smells funny.
Yep.
Because people, it's one of those things where you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't.
Well, I think this was a special case because I did remember reading a report that around the time that they made the decision to sell the DLC, they were issued a settlement where they were on the hook for quite a large amount of money because of a dispute. I'm unclear right now of the nature of the dispute, but I think
that was an internal, if I remember correctly, that was an internal dispute with Wildcard and a former employee about whether or not assets or ideas for Ark was his or theirs or whose. Especially when you're dealing with a husband-wife team, I think, who run Wildcard, and this was a close friend of theirs. It's very complicated.
And I think they wound up paying out quite a bit of money. I know that they did wind up having a very large financial liability to that. And it is possible that without selling that additional DLC to people who were playing it, they may not have survived that. Yeah, they would have closed because they're a small enough studio that they definitely may have closed with a huge financial burden. But I think that's the thing. this is where like PR is everything, and when you don't
Mhm.
handle that well, and they
Yeah.
haven't handled that particularly well.
No, and they've admitted that. Like the PR is not their strong suit. They're developers. They're not PR people.
But I mean, this is another one where one of the reasons that they said that they needed to go from 30 to 60 is to maintain price parity between all the major releases for this game.
Yeah, because they
Which,
announced at E3 this year that hey, besides it going to Xbox, it's going to go to PS4. So they got to work on that too.
but that's
And
where
then
the
if
whole
they
thing.
launch, yeah,
But that's where the whole thing smells fishy. It's like price parity. No one talks about price parity. They talk about a Nintendo tax because the cart costs extra, but not price parity. So it becomes
well,
one of
I'm
those
trying to
things
think.
where it's like we all feel the PR in the statement, and some people who are more burned by the game than others, or people who just are self-righteously indignant on the internet.
See,
You know,
I look at it this way. Usually, what happens with game development is a AAA title like Watch Dogs, which was on all three platforms, right?
yeah.
If I remember correctly. Okay, so that game was originally developed for console and then ported to PC, correct?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ark is specifically built as a PC game by its independent developer, where then a AAA developer came in and said, hey, we would like you to port that to our console. And then another AAA company, Sony, came and said the same thing. I'm not familiar with many examples of that in the marketplace.
There are very few.
There are very few, unless the PC component is a AAA company putting out a PC game like, I don't know, Far Cry, and going, okay, we're going to port this out to console. But that's still an in-house decision.
Maybe XCOM is another example of that.
Yeah,
Because
where it's
XCOM was
still the same
definitely
company.
built for the PC, and then they did a great job porting it to console. Because I played the whole
Yeah,
thing
but it
on
was
the
the same
PS3.
company. It was the same company who did it, no?
Yeah, yeah.
And XCOM was not an early access game.
No, it was not.
Yeah, I
It
think
was
that's where
not.
the difference is. So the argument I'm making,
Mhm.
it's a long way to get there, but the argument I'm making is I don't see many instances of that you can pull from this kind of situation where you have a independent game developer develop a product, and then a larger developer come in and want to port it over to its consoles and then launch. Because the problem is the PC guys want to sit there and go, well, we've had it for 2 years. And so they can afford to pay $30 for it and charge $30 for it. But Microsoft and Sony will not sit there and take the risk of like sitting there going, hey, we have a $60 port, and everybody's going to go, well, it's $30 on PC. I'd just rather pay for it on PC.
I feel like too, this is a bit of bit of ignorance on the part of the consumer base in how games are developed. Because if your game is still developing content, even 6 months prior to release, that's pretty bad when you think about it. Because at a certain point, like let's say it takes you 3 years to develop a game, you'd want to have most of that content buttoned up by like a year and a half. So you spend the next year and a half just building the rest of the systems that you need.
Yeah, but I don't think that world exists anymore where game developers work that way. Because if you look at a series like Arma, it launched, 2-3 years ago, Arma 3?
Mm-hmm.
They're still providing DLC content and fixes and upgrades but that's a game that doesn't render out cycles like, a Far Cry or an Assassin's Creed where every year you have a new iteration. So they do it as a means to extend the life of that game.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm talking more if you're looking to hit a target release date, you're not.
Oh, yeah.
You're not still working on content for that game 6 months, before before you launch. Like that's just kind of ridiculous. And at the point where Arc, really finished adding new content to it, that really should have been the point where, they're focusing on other developments. But that to say that, I've had this game for 2 years, it's been out for 2 years, that's kind of incorrect because the game hasn't existed in its current state for very long.
No. And that's the thing, is like it hasn't quote unquote been out for 2 years. There have been
No.
iterations on that game for 2 years, but that game hasn't been finished yet. It won't be out until it's launched.
And with the state of games now, yeah, absolutely. Even the game that we get at launch, the 1.0, so to speak, it may not be the game that we get when they finally decide to go 1.7 or even 2.
Yeah.
And
Because we're still playing games now. Like, how many times you open up Steam and there's an update to a game that's been out?
There's a couple of games like that now. Hell, you could even look at Final Fantasy 14. Final Fantasy 14 that exists today is not the 1.0 that was released.
Yeah.
It's a special case, yes, because the 1.0 was such a shit show. But
And that's the other thing is like so many games launch broken. It's like be happy that it's playable on day one,
but
or that it's even playable now.
But that's a dangerous thing too, because it's like we should demand better functioning games on day one.
Oh, I agree.
You know?
I completely agree with
Look,
that sentiment.
when I bought into Ark, I could barely play it. But the last time I did load Ark after a huge number of patches, and definitely they went through a performance pass. It was performing a lot better. And the teams take their time with it. I mean, look, I'm playing PUBG right now, and they released this massive patch like not too long ago, and now I went from being able to barely play it at 720p resolution to very playable at 1080p. And it just takes time. They're not gonna always go through optimization and cleanup as they work, because that's just not the way the coding works. It doesn't make sense to clean up the code if you're still working on it. So
I mean, that's the thing too. Do you expect PUBG's price to go up when it launches?
depends on the additional content they add. They're
'Cause isn't
adding.
that going to console? Isn't that going to console also?
I wouldn't be surprised, but again, I don't feel like it's a punishment for that's the way that they're trying to characterize this price increase is that it's punishing those that did not buy it during early access.
No, because you listen.
But
it's no. If you went to go buy it in a store, it'd be retail price. You're not going to
Yeah.
get a deal just because you're buying it through Steam.
No, absolutely.
You're not guaranteed that at all.
hmm And there was a time where the PC edition was always $10 cheaper. I think Max Payne was $50, whereas on the console it was
It was like 60. Yeah.
But at the same time, you're basically paying for the privilege to get this game as early as possible and help them with development.
Yeah, and it's
You
also
know?
at the same time realizing that it is early access, and I know this is kind of the tropey nature of it, but it's like it is not a complete game. It is broken. So basically, we are not going to charge you the full price because we don't feel justified in charging you the full price because it's not fully functional.
hmm
So why are we going to charge you $60 for something? I mean, to be honest, that would be robbery if somebody charges you full retail price out of the gate on early access.
The only thing I'm waiting for Ark is the supposed story mode. That's the main thing I'm waiting for
Yeah,
before I
I'm
just
curious.
jump back into it.
They've been teasing that for well over a year about like what the single player campaign is going to be like, but that's been kept under wraps because that's kind of where like this is going to be a payoff. This is going to be the really cool thing that ties everything together.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
I think this is just a matter of their poor standing with the community, unfortunately, for other things that were frankly beyond their control. And they're being punished unfairly, even by other developers. Like I don't agree with the idea that you shouldn't evaluate attribute a value to your game that is set based on other people. You should be mindful of what the market is. But if you feel you have a $60 product, by all means, sell it at $60. If
And my
people
other-
like
yeah.
it, they're going to buy into it.
Yeah, and my other complaint with like things like reviews on Steam is if you read through reviews on Arc, right now it's quote unquote mixed with 116,000 reviews. I would love for somebody to comb through all of those and see how many garbage reviews are in there. Not bad reviews like, oh, this is a bad game, but people just being pissy or upset because something changed in the game that they didn't expect or didn't like.
Yeah.
And it's an early access game, and that's one of those things where it's like you're going to kneecap a game, that other people are enjoying. Just because it didn't turn into the game that you wanted. It's not up to you where the game goes. You're buying into a game that is going to change. It is not a full retail purchase. If it was already released and you bought it, you can be pissed and say, hey, this is a shit game. But to be able to sit there and review something in early access and sit there and go, well, this is not what I was playing 6 months ago. It's like, no, it's being developed. Of course it's not going to be the same game in 6 months. Things happen. Things change. They adapt to a player base. Things may come up with when they have it out and they see how people interact with the product that the developer doesn't like, or that seem unfair or unbalanced, or in the large scale of things, is going to punish a player base and not be inclusive for people who will jump in brand new. So like for me, my thing is I don't know if this is a thing that you really can do, but like for me, like why not ban reviewing early access games? Why not allow them to review it once it's launched, as opposed to whenever they log in to review it.
I would say maybe yes to having some sort of weight on them, but I wouldn't outright say, ban the early access review, because it's an important tool for people who are just stumbling upon the game to get some feedback to
That's
whether
true.
or not this early access game is worth jumping into. It's one of the reasons why ultimately I did buy Ark. Was not really the videos from Slipgator and your recommendations. It ultimately was what people were saying about it, and there was enough positive buzz about it that I'm like, okay, this could be fun. I bounced off of it because of the way that the servers interacted, but that wasn't, that's to be expected,
Yeah.
And that's also my personal preference. It's not a game that I could throw a lot of hours in but I liked the systems, so I was willing to wait until they optimized it to jump back into it.
Yeah.
That and other technical issues with my computer. Hated every 20 gig patch that came through Steam, and just
That's the other thing.
wept.
It's like sometimes you have to sit there and go, is this built for my machine? No. Then don't complain when it doesn't run.
Maybe some sort of modified comment system. Is this updated regularly? Is this does this seem like it's actually going to leave beta? Does this have a date that it's actually going to leave? That kind of thing.
Well, that's like with Kickstarter. That all comes down to how much communication the studio eventually has with its player base, and the better Kickstarters and the really good early access games, of which this was a very good one. In my opinion, like there was a lot of transparency. There were some bouts of radio silence where it was necessary while they were dealing with certain situations, but overall I think they did a good job communicating what was happening with the game and the frequent changes. So, and the game also gives a very high level of customization. You don't want high tech in your servers, primitive only servers. You want the full gambit, and you want taming to be super quick. Hey, we could do that for you.
Yeah, you want PvE, you want PvP, we're going to give you everything.
Yeah, it was very much a sandbox game. So
yeah.
I'm not sure where people are not seeing a lot of value in this. So
It's not. I think some people are like, well, why isn't it more FPS? It's like because it's not a shooter; it's a survival game. And like, well, this is I keep getting killed every 5 minutes. Like, it's a survival game. There are animals that are 6 times your size. You're going to sit there and go toe to toe. It's like, how easy do you want this? I mean, you can make it that easy, where you're pretty much walking around completely impervious. I mean, I have played on servers where pretty much after you get past a certain level, you don't have to worry about anything ever again, and that only is enjoyable for so long.
Yeah, and figuring it all out, like the leveling system, the way that you earn new crafting abilities, like the first time that I really understood what was going on and built myself a very durable structure with a chest to put stuff in and a bed, I felt accomplished.
Yeah.
Even though I was still on the beach and I shouldn't have stayed on the beach, I still was like, hey, I'm getting somewhere. You know? And then
the sense of community is great. I mean, I've been on 3 private servers where each community has been fantastic. I put over 1,000 hours into the game. I mean, I haven't played in a little while, but I've played 1,000 hours in that game. That's a lot of time to put into a game and have a very good understanding of how it's been, where it's going, and the kind of the kind of game it wants to be and the kind of game it works as opposed to I've been on PvP servers where people have been playing there for weeks and they don't sleep because they just do it in shifts, and they are very much alpha tribes and all they do is raid, and that can be a very frustrating experience. That's kind of why I went to PvE. But having that flexibility and that ability, I was very, thankful for. There are, if it was one of those games where it's just strictly PvP and it's, full on survival and you kind of suck it up and move on, I would have given up on the game, 4 hours in.
Mm-hmm.
But that's my soapbox.
I can feel the hate for the situation flow through you.
I mean,
It's a poor situation, but it's
Yeah.
not. Ultimately, I think it's a lot of hot air, the usual hot steam air for nothing.
And I can also understand like people complaining about, well, why is it all of a sudden $60 on the store? It's like, well, if you already bought it, don't complain. Number one,
Mhm.
but number two, I can see like suddenly there being a $30 price difference. It's like, oh, what the hell happened? It's like, well, what happened was it's closer to release, and it has to be able to be sold on par with the other two systems because those guys aren't going to lower their price.
Yeah.
So, and for Microsoft and Sony, they're not going to want to be undercut by another system. So I'm pretty sure there's an agreement there that they have to keep parity.
Yeah.
So that's a whole other conversation about, how much, pull a developer has over its product, especially when it's being ported out to other developers.
I think they're just getting hit unfairly on this, but the hate on the internet is strong, and it's just an unfortunate situation for them. The game is good. It's a lot of fun from what I did play. It's just a shame that it brought my computer to its knees when it did. But
we'll get back into it. We'll find it. We'll find a server somewhere, and it'll just be us, and we'll tool around, and we'll have a good time.
Well, once it releases, once optimization is done, and once these frequent 20 gig patches are in the past, then I can feel more comfortable jumping back in.
Exactly. We'll hop on somewhere and just hang out. And,
hey man, until then, I have PUBG to keep me warm at night.
Yeah, and I'll probably be joining you with that soon, and that'll just be another time suck.
We gotta somehow convince Mel to get in on too.
I don't think it'll take much convincing. I think she'll just do it just so she could shoot you.
Mel, do you want to jump out of a plane with us and go scavenge for gear and weapons?
Maybe.
I'm telling you, she just wants to shoot you.
I might get into Ark, so I could shoot you or stab you.
Actually, you could probably, get him eaten by a dinosaur.
Yeah, I was thinking about that too.
I just want to get metal armor, goggles, and a las gun of some sort.
And then ride a dinosaur.
And then ride a raptor, in particular.
Yeah.
Probably with all the metal armor, it'll be a very fat raptor.
Yes, me and my fat raptor. I'll call him Fat Boy Slim.
Oh God.
Oh, okay.
I think it's about a good place to end it. How about you?
I think it's more than a good place to end it.
I think it's more than a good place to end it. So, thank you for tolerating us on this long and winding road. And so feel free to like, comment, subscribe. Be generous, be nice. We're just still starting out. And tune in next week and we'll have more discussion. Hopefully by then Ted will be back with us and we'll have seen something, we hope.
Yeah, you guys can, if you want to reach out to me, you can find me on Twitter. I'm at SilverRook.
It's in the down there under the video. You'll see what the handles
let's
are.
see, how did I spell this? SYLVERROOK. And that's also my YouTube channel, but I don't have anything on it yet, so stay tuned.
Yeah,
it's a work in
that'll be
progress.
remedied soon with more PUBG rounds. We'll start posting that stuff up.
Well, if I could never get it to record right, but that's a whole other issue.
Well, we'll deal with that later.
But yeah, guys, stay tuned for updates. We'll have an actual landing zone for the audio version of this podcast, and we'll update you on that once we have more details.
Yeah, this will be an evolving project. Pretty soon we'll have all the whiz bangs and doodads of most modern podcasts, but we'll get there eventually.
And I think by next week we'll be able to announce what our actual schedule is going to be, just so that you can know exactly when to expect the next episode.
Exactly.
It'll
and
be
then
exciting.
We'll completely abandon that because reasons.
Expect the unexpected.
Exactly. So, for this week's Geek versus Geek, I'm Joe.
I'm Dan.
I'm Mel. And Ted is gone.
And
Ted is gone.
And that was Ted.
So, have a good week, guys. We'll catch you next time.
Bye.
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 What is this, episode 8?
Yeah.
Corgi, guitar, crossbow, Ken, trap, power bullets, kidnapping bikers, people, crazies, car, carnivore, Dirk Gently's.
I don't know what's going on anymore.
Who's whistling? What's that, Mel?
This is the dog. The dog whistles through his ass.
It's very stinky.
Deep breathing exercises.
Deep butting exercises.
I'm glad I'm
man.
recording.